Doc? I mean, is he, retarded?
Retarded means slow. Was he slow?
No.
Then you don't sound retarded to me. He's a good kid and devil behind the wheel. What the hell else more do you need to know?
So you don't think that there's something wrong with him just not saying anything?
There's nothing wrong with a little quiet.
All right. Here we go. Well, thank you for tuning in to what is now the 4th episode of the Telling Stories podcast. I'm Andrew Crabtree, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Rick Maxton.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Excited about talking about Baby Driver today. Man,
Baby Driver, released in 2017. If you haven't listened to any of our podcasts before, if this is your first one, thanks for making it in. We talk about movies that we love. We like a lot of movies, and we kind of try to find the connection between those movies and the gospel, and that can be an allegory or a theme. So welcome, and you're about to get a thorough education on the movie Baby Driver. 2017, written and directed by Edgar Wright.
Yeah, I'm excited about talking about this movie, and I had no idea. Like, I've known Simon Pegg for a while and his stuff, but didn't know that he was kind of connected with Edgar Wright. And
so it's kind of surprising to me, and like I'm not like a big Shaun of the Dead guy or anything, but I'm familiar enough that I would not have necessarily pegged the guy that pegged. That's a little accidental pun there.
Yeah,
I would not have necessarily put the guy that did Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End as the same guy that wrote and directed Baby Driver.
Yeah, me either. But good movies.
Yeah, great. And then the show Spaced, and because of all those shows, Wright kind of has this, this reputation for being somebody who does parody.
Yeah.
But Baby Driver, I don't feel like is remotely a parody.
No, they're totally different. It's almost a different genre.
Right.
It's really sort of elegant, or the way that the Baby Driver is shot and choreographed and all that stuff is way different.
Elegant's actually a really good word for that. It's interesting to me that he did those movies that I would consider a little more silly, and then also Baby Driver, who I think is a little more serious. It just kind of it shows some diversity, and I think it takes quite a bit of talent to be able to do both of those styles as well as he does it.
Right, but I think while it is serious and not silly like his other movies are, there is like a hint of silly that kind of floats through. A hint of just, I don't know, silly's the right word, but just
casual,
off the cuff, casual.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
I agree.
Yeah.
So Edgar Wright, I really didn't know that name before I started researching Baby Driver. Obviously after the fact made the connection to Shaun of the Dead and those movies. This movie was a $34 million budget, which is really not a large budget for Hollywood standards.
Yeah, it's just like a year and a half ago.
Yeah. $34 million budget. If you think back and you watch the movie, all the actors and there's probably a lot of takes and a lot of equipment. I looked this up. There were 150 cars that were used on the set of this show.
Wow.
On this movie.
Wow.
So,
I didn't research the $34 million. That's incredible.
$34 million budget.
I mean, just with the actors alone, with Jon Hamm and all these, there's a lot of actors that probably didn't get their normal paycheck then.
So I was really surprised by the $34 million budget. That's probably about half of what many comparable movies would be. It grossed 107 million U.S. box office, 228 million globally. Wow. So it's a film that made some money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you get those actors together with that budget, you're gonna make money.
It was to me, it was a movie that flew a little bit under the radar. I think it's a little bit underrated. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even a movie that when it was theatrically released that was on my radar at all. Like I wasn't in line to go see it. A mutual friend of ours, Kyle Walton, told me he saw it in the theaters, and as a fellow videographer of sorts, suggested that I see it. Yeah. Because cinematically,
it's incredible.
I mean, how many cooler movies have you seen just cinematically?
None. And like so I went with a guy named Mike, who's a really good friend who is a movie buff too, at the theater, like first weekend, and we just kept talking about this movie is just cool.
It's just perfectly defined as cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and like even is there a cooler actor than Jamie Foxx or Jon Hamm? Those guys, they're just cool. We needed Sam Jackson and Morgan Freeman to make it perfect.
Fair enough. So, when you think about Baby Driver, the first thing to me that stands out, and the first thing that I think probably to most people that have seen it that is synonymous with this movie, is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculously cool.
Yeah, ridiculously cool, eclectic, all over the place. But yeah, just it's great.
I did a little behind-the-scenes research, and Edgar Wright, before the actors were cast, before the script was even finalized, had picked every single song that was in the soundtrack to this movie, and they remained unchanged. So the very first detail, the first detail of the movie as it was planned was the soundtrack, and they literally backed the whole rest of the movie into that soundtrack.
Wow.
They changed actors. You know, there were some actors that were cast for some roles that changed in and out, but the soundtrack, those songs, stayed the same through the entire planning process. Of
and I'm learning that as I researched like the making of movies and the background of movies and those sort of things, that happens more frequently than you realize, that the soundtrack kind of provides story. And if you're not paying attention, you don't realize it. But when you start paying attention to that, it just like, it kind of jumps off the page and is another form of storytelling.
It really sets the tone.
Yeah.
For what this movie is going to become.
Especially in this movie. And I love like the Telling Stories podcast. And this movie uses so many different genres or so many different elements to tell a story. Even the way an actor walks is telling a story.
So I think to start with this movie is best to start right at the beginning.
Yeah.
The first time I watched this movie, and even I've watched this movie twice now. Both times I watched it, I was just mesmerized. And I don't guess it's necessarily the exact opening scene, but like I call it the opening scene because it's when the intro credits are rolling.
Right.
And I don't
and
remember.
By the way, that opening scene, when it's done, I could be finished. Yeah. Like that is enough to say this is a great movie.
So Baby, played by Ansel Elgort.
Yeah.
Who's a young actor that's been in a lot of things. He's great in this movie.
Right.
Every step he makes is in time to the song. And even the way he interacts with the background elements is completely and thoroughly planned to the song. I think there's one point in the song where there's like a trumpet solo.
Yeah.
And as soon as the trumpet solo cues, he walks by a storefront.
Yeah. And he it's just when we talk about the themes towards the end in a little bit, I want to come back to this, but like that idea that every single step is on beat is like, that's telling a big story in my heart.
So let's go ahead and let's dive into that.
All right.
Do you want to do that, or do you want to go?
Yeah, no.
Do you want to summarize the plot, or do you want to jump into the?
Well, I think maybe it might be good to kind of foreshadow to that and then come back to the plot. Let's do that.
Okay. So I was reading, speaking about the everything choreographed, everything on beat. So the name of the movie is Baby Driver. A good chunk of the action scenes in this movie, if not all of them, are set in a car.
Yeah.
They literally, because they wanted everything to be so choreographed to the music, and they wanted everything to be so natural, when they were doing the chase scenes and the driving scenes, before they would ever put a car on pavement, they would go out and measure, and because they said, we know we want him to turn the wheel on this beat.
Right.
So they would go out and measure and mathematically how fast does the car need to go for him to hit this mark at this point in the song.
So there's algebra involved in filmmaking.
Apparently.
All right. That sucks.
That really puts a damper on my future as a filmmaker.
Well, it puts a damper on your future as a filmmaker to make such a film as Baby Driver. You can make other things where algebra is not required.
So they literally, like, even the car scenes, like, if I'm filming that movie, I'm just going to edit it or cut it or speed it up or slow it down just a little bit, however I need to get it to fall where it. But they literally wanted it to be so natural that they measured off the road and they knew how fast the car had to be going for when he hit this mark that he was going to turn the wheel on this beat.
Yeah, and then he had to turn the wheel on that beat and turn it at the right degree and the right angle. But the thing is that just like encaptures my brain is that everything in this film, from the pace of a person's walk to the music to the set design, everything is pulling in a very specific direction.
It was there was a master plan to this movie that I don't know I've ever seen anything similar before in any other movie.
And that's the best movies, I think, are telling stories that they're not trying to tell. And maybe he was trying to tell a particular story, but the story below the story, and that's where I always come back to, and all the podcasts we've done so far, the story below the story, which points to the story that's below that story, here is that everything is pulling in one direction. And just and when you go back, I only watched this movie one time until we knew we were going to do this podcast, so I watched it again. It's just, when you watch it that second time, from that notion that everything is pulling to this direction, it's incredible.
It goes even deeper than I could have fathomed or I could have pulled out watching this movie twice. As doing my research, I was reading. So Edgar Wright. So I didn't realize this watching it, but you go back and you can think about it. Every character in this movie has a wardrobe color palette.
Really?
So Jamie Foxx wears red in every scene.
I did. I knew he was in red all the time, but I didn't notice the other ones.
So Baby wears black and white.
Black and white.
And so what's really interesting, and this is intentional, Baby's he wears like an undershirt, like a white undershirt in the first scene with a gray black jacket over the top of it. His shirt that he wears under his jacket gets progressively darker throughout the movie.
Wow.
So as he gets more involved in a life of crime, his shirt goes from this pure white shirt to, I think they said that he changes shirts 4 times throughout the movie.
Wow.
Each progressively a darker shade of gray.
Wow.
Which to me, I mean, like, I would never have noticed that.
But can we stop the rolling the video and the audio, because I want to go look at that, because
that's incredible.
Like that's the heart of all this. And one of the things that I always say to myself and to people around me is that, like, pay attention to everything that's happening to you, because it's pulling you in a specific direction.
Yeah.
And there's this sovereignty that's in place that goes on in our worlds that we just don't pay attention to. And I don't remember exactly what this is from. I'll have to check this out. Maybe you can fact check this and put this in at the end. But we don't realize the most significant moments in our lives when they're happening.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a quote from a movie. I think maybe Morgan Freeman says it in Shawshank or something. I don't know. But
if you're watching the video of this, there's gonna be a fact check box about right here.
Right here. All right. But like, I think that this movie does a really good job of drawing your attention to that. Like that very first scene, he's telling you, hey, pay attention to the peripheral, because I'm telling a story in the peripheral. Because if you're like, when he's walking and some of the lyrics of the song are literally graffiti into the wall, like, I think it's not just cool, but it's also telling you, hey, pay attention to the detail, because there's story in the detail. And there's not just story in the detail within the context of this movie. In our lives, there's story in the detail.
Yeah, I didn't even put that together with that scene, but you're right. I mean, yeah. And I thought it was great too. Like, speaking to that, like, you know, like, you never know what moments are going to be significant. Like,
right.
We should probably do the plot summary here in just a second, but like, Jon Hamm.
Yeah, we're already getting really deep,
we're
man.
going through it.
I've shot all my bullets. That's all I got, man.
Well, I want to come back to this idea of kind of a master design, because I think it's going to really be the main theme that we draw out of this movie. Plot summary. Again, full disclosure, we're gonna spoil this for you.
All right.
Like, if you haven't seen Baby Driver and you plan on it, please pause this. We've already given away a lot.
Or just listen to the rest of it and then watch it
go
again,
back and
because
watch
you'll
it.
have all the yeah.
That's even better. All right, so I think the best thing to do right now, before we get too much deeper into the themes of the film, let's go ahead and do a plot summary.
Sounds good.
I think the listeners deserve that.
Yes, they do.
So this movie, you know, title character of this movie, Baby, Ansel Elgort. He's been, I think the first movie I saw him in was that sappy movie. My wife would know the name of it. It's based on a book.
I can check the
IMDb guy
IMDb here. I'm
right
here on it.
Fault in Our Stars.
Fault in Our Stars. Dude, you saw that movie?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, man.
When my wife listens to this...
He got sad for a second when he owned it.
Like, you know what? No, I did. I saw that movie, and I may have cried.
This may be the second time I want to turn the podcast off. I want to leave.
All different reasons. He's been in a few other things, I feel like. kind of a young actor that's growing in popularity. He's good in this movie. Very kind of an understated character. So Baby, I don't know how old his character is, but he's probably in his early 20s.
Yeah, something like that.
Baby has tinnitus in his ears because of a car accident that his parents were in.
Okay.
And I think that just makes a really nice tie-in to the soundtrack of this movie.
Yeah.
Basically, the soundtrack is drowning out the tinnitus in his ears.
Yeah. Which is telling a story.
Well, we'll get back to that because I love that tie-in. But what's really interesting to me because of the soundtrack in this movie, because Baby's always got his iPods going or his music in the car or whatever, the soundtrack is introduced so organically in this movie because it is never just playing in the back. I mean, it is, but it's always playing for a reason. It's always the soundtrack starts as his earbuds go in or as he hits the button on the radio.
Right.
It's always actually playing. It's not just, like music in the heavens.
It's not coming from some random weird place.
It's not just forced in. It's very organic, which makes it super real to me.
And better storytelling.
Yes, completely agree. It gives it an explanation. So Baby has 100 iPods that he switches in and out, listens to great music, and he's always got his earbuds in, even when he's walking down the street, and even when people think he's not listening or not paying attention, he is. He's just got music in, so he hears more.
You know
than
what?
just the
What's
ring.
interesting? I read something a bit that somebody had a critique that he had so many. How did you get so many different iPods? And Edgar Wright's answer is that he was a car thief, and he was he broke into cars.
That's interesting.
So and he's got, what does he have a bunch of throughout the movie? Sunglasses and an iPod.
Yeah, wow.
So he's breaking into cars, taking people's sunglasses and iPods.
Boom, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
You pick up a new car, because some of his iPods I feel like were bejeweled and bedazzled.
Right, yeah.
And
when he sits down with Deborah he's got that pink bedazzled one, yeah.
That makes so much sense, and I never put that together.
He stole it from some girl's cabriolet.
Yeah, so this is why you listen to the Telling Podcast, the Telling Stories podcast.
Yeah.
If you're listening, that was a gem.
There we go.
Sunglasses and iPhones. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So Baby's got the thing with music covering up his tinnitus. Kind of the main synopsis of the story here is Baby, in his youth, not parents died in a car crash, which we actually get a glimpse of that scene in the movie. Very powerful.
Yeah.
And so Baby steals a car, I guess a Mercedes, I think specifically, from the character we only know him as Doc.
Yeah.
And it's played by Kevin Spacey. Well, Doc is a crime boss.
Yeah.
And the Mercedes that Baby stole had quote unquote merchandise in the trunk. And so Baby, so Doc recruits Baby into a life of crime, being his getaway driver, because he's a very skilled driver, to pay back his debt for that merchandise that was destroyed when Baby stole his car.
By the way, did you know that Doc, the name Doc for him, and you know where that came from? It's a nod to Back to the Future.
Really?
Yep.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I hold a very special place with Back to the Future.
Yeah. Well, this is a good movie.
Here, okay. If we're making nods back to the Future here as we talk about this, did you notice that Flea was in this movie? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Flea, was Needles in Back to the Future. So anytime I watch a movie, I feel like I'm constantly playing 5 Degrees of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
You know how people used to play 5 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, right.
Well, for me, it's how can a movie tie back to the Future?
Right. Well, there you go. This one is a literal nod. Like Edgar Wright says, hey, his name is Doc because it's a nod to Back to the Future.
Well, how about that? I didn't know that. So Baby's trying to pay back his debt to Doc for the stolen merchandise. So goes on all these jobs driving the car. Gets to where he thinks he's about paid up. Says it's his last job, and then we're even. Mm-hmm. Does it, and Baby assumes that getting paid up and even means he's out, and Doc kind of has different plans.
Right.
So
are you ever really out with the mob? Then, if you watched a mob movie, you're never out.
Yeah. Well, if you are, you're in the bottom of a lake.
Right.
So Baby pays his debt, thinks he's done. Doc pretty boldly tells him he's not. Baby goes on one last drive. He's got a girl that he's sweet on, Deborah, that works at the diner, and him and Deborah are going to jump town. Yeah. But he gets sucked back into one last job, and that's when his streak of successful successful missions goes askew.
Yeah, and he's accompanied by some pretty evil people.
So
The supporting characters are
let's
pretty
dive
evil
into that.
people.
So Jon Hamm,
Yeah,
always like to bring the podcast back to St. Louis when we can.
repping it 314.
Yeah, right. Jon Hamm,
Yeah.
St. Louis' favorite son.
That's right.
His character in this movie is fascinating to me.
Yep.
And I want to know if you saw it the same way or if I just got sucked into this. His character early in this movie seems so cool.
Yeah.
Like, he's a criminal and you know he's a bad guy, but he just seems so trustworthy. He
Right.
kind of takes baby under his wing.
Right, and I feel like when that last crew kind of gets together, John Bernthal's character is crazy,
Yeah.
and psychopathic, and so is
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx's character,
Yeah.
and so that
But you
kind
know
of
what you're getting with those guys.
that kind of leaves Jon Hamm to be the cool guy.
He's like, kind of
But I
taking
think it
care
may
of
be-
baby with the psychos.
But
like,
it
leave
may
him
be
alone.
us, like he's a St. Louis guy, so we want to
could have
think
been
of
reading
him,
that
like
into it.
we kind of push that.
And maybe Jon Hamm just projects a cool vibe anyway.
That's definitely true that he does that.
But I think that this was just intentionally set up because Jon Hamm's character seems, and maybe it's just because he reaches out to baby in a way that's unique to the other guys. Because Jamie Foxx and Jon Bernthal are so openly violent, like
Yeah.
on the surface.
Yeah, and John Bernthal's like picking at baby and what?
Yeah,
like
and so I mean Jamie
trying
Foxx
to pick
really
a
does
fight.
too.
Yeah,
But you really kind of trust Jon Hamm in a way that you don't the other guys.
right.
But in that last scene when things go sideways, he goes full
He's
blown
evil.
psycho.
Yeah, right.
Like way more evil than Jamie Foxx's character,
Right.
who was wearing it on the surface.
Yep.
That deep seated evil in Jon
Yep.
Hamm comes up hard.
We're all capable of that evil, man.
So that was an interesting part of this, and I think that's in my notes somewhere. Is that that was a fascinating character to me, and I think that there's a lot even we can draw thematically from
Yeah.
his character,
Right.
That maybe flew under the radar for a lot of people, but to me that was I liked him so much, and then when he kind of flipped,
Yeah, I found myself thinking we're rooting for this guy,
Yeah.
and same with Kevin Spacey too. Like
Yeah.
is he protecting baby or is he using baby? And he's
Correct.
probably doing both.
Correct. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so the last job goes awry. Baby ends up getting through this. He picks up Deborah. They're gonna skip town, and he's one last drive through town. Furious car chase scene. He drops off his foster parent at an old folks home, which was kind of a cool scene.
By the way, that the foster parent he plays a deaf guy,
Yeah.
but he's actually deaf.
Yeah,
in real life.
really?
The actor is actually deaf. I learned that this week.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Baby and Deborah. So we're fast forwarding to kind of the to the end, and I want to spend some time here. Baby and Deborah are in the car, and there's a scene where they're doing their chase, and then they're out on their way out of town, and there's a slow pan up, like we're going up into the sky,
You wanted
looking
the movie
down
to
on
end
them.
right there, didn't you?
Yeah, like baby's leaving, and then like as it pans out, there's like a line of cop cars behind him.
Yeah.
And to me, the first time I watched this movie, that's where it should have ended. The first, and I'm still conflicted on this a little bit, but the first time I watched this movie,
Let
I'm
me
like,
change your mind. I'll change your
okay,
mind.
let's get back to it.
In
But
this conversation.
when they pan out and there's a line of cop cars behind them, I'm expecting the movie to end, and it doesn't, and it made me angry because I thought
Okay.
the movie was so perfect.
Yeah.
And then it got to that moment where I thought, okay, they're going to leave us on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Does he escape? Does he not? I thought it should have ended.
Okay.
Okay, and I want to hear what you think because the second time I watched the movie, I felt a little differently. So speak to that ending.
Well, first of all, I didn't want it to end there, but mostly because I didn't want it to end yet.
Okay,
Give me
You're just
another
enjoying
30,
yourself.
45
Gotcha.
minutes. Let's keep this thing rolling. But I feel like this movie in particular is telling a bigger story than what happens to baby. Does he get caught or does he not get caught? Does he go to prison? Does he not go? It's telling a bigger story than that. And so, like, to leave me with that cliffhanger would have been like,
It would have just been.
Right. But I think the cliffhanger that they did leave us with is more to the point of the story that they're really trying to tell, and bigger than that.
So where I wanted the movie the first time was there on the car chase. So what ends up happening is they get caught on a bridge. They're driving down the bridge. Cops in front of them. They start to back up. There's cops behind them. Baby gets caught.
stuck.
Then we go. There's a court case. Baby's baby's, sentenced to, 25 years with possible for parole.
Right.
Then
and throughout that court case, there are people. The only people you see testifying are people that are testifying about the good character of Baby.
And that's maybe something that I lost in my rushed synopsis of this, is that Baby's character is tormented by this life that he's trapped in.
Right. He's good, but he's bad.
You see,
he's a good guy that does bad things.
Throughout the movie, you see the quality of his heart, and he's got good intentions, but he just is trapped in a life of violence, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so those people that help us see those glimpses of good are the people that testify on his behalf, and whether that maybe plays into the possibility of parole or whatever. Right. And probably important to note is that this, I don't remember precisely when we go black and white in this, but I don't know if it's when he goes to prison or
I think it's in prison at some point.
We switched to black and white, and I didn't realize this the first time I saw it, but I guess there's a big debate, and the second time I saw it, it made perfect sense. There's a big debate online whether, Baby goes to prison, good behavior, gets out. When he's released, Deborah's waiting on him.
Right.
So the debate is Baby actually released from prison, and this is literal, or is this Baby in his mind trying to cope with being in prison?
And I think that's the question.
That's the real question
that he leaves you with.
Yeah.
Because Baby's full fruition is to get to be with the one that he loves, not whether he gets caught or not. And I think that's what the movie's about. All this good and evil that's present in our lives, are we going to find our love or not? And I love that he leaves us with that cliffhanger. And I love that he uses the black and white. And then when he comes out and sees her, like when we dissolve from black and white to color again, it's like on her face.
Yeah.
And like the beauty of, and she's beautiful, and the beauty of her face goes from black and white to color, and then it comes back to him, and he's got this little smirk on his face, like, this is it. This is, and then I
his
think
deepest desire.
Right. So then I go back and watch it again, trying to figure out if it's real or if it's a dream. And there's two things for me that make me think that it's a dream. One, he kind of closes his eyes and the screen goes dark for like half a beat. And then they don't, that kind of gives you a little bit of a picture that it's a dream. But then, so the judge says 25 years, but 5 years with good behavior. So this is at least 5 years after he's been caught. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them look 5 years older.
Yeah, that's true.
And Edgar Wright pays such attention to detail.
He would have aged them.
Right. And he didn't.
And isn't she driving some like really beautiful old classic car?
Yeah, right.
Like that would have been like in his dream.
Classic convertible.
Yeah, so
whatever.
So to his
would
credit,
have been a good dream car for him.
So Edgar Wright gives us no help in post production in satisfying this question, because I've read an interview with him, and someone asked him, "Is this real or is this Baby's imagination?" And he wouldn't talk.
Yeah,
it was good for him.
But like even the part of that is like the dream can be like reality.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting. I also Edgar Wright wasn't telling, and then so I also saw where someone asked Ansel Elgort and what's the girl that plays? I think I had it in here. Lily James plays Deborah.
Yep.
They were asked the same question, and Ansel Elgort says, "No way. It's got to be his imagination, because there's no way Baby's going to ask her to wait for him for 5 years."
Right.
And then so Deborah was asked the same question, Lily James, and she said, "Oh, for sure it's real."
Yeah.
The girl saw it as literal, and the boy saw it as figurative.
Right. Well, I think that even that idea, like for him to say, "There's no way that you're going to wait for me."
Yeah. But the
and
girl
her to say, "There's no way I'm not going to wait for you."
It's interesting.
And that's the heart of love, I think.
Yeah.
Is that like I don't expect you to wait on me, and for her to say like there's just like I don't have an option. I mean, I love you, so I'm gonna wait, obviously.
So
and no matter what you like, here's some gospel stuff, because like no matter what you do, I'm still here loving you.
Yeah.
That's great. That's beautiful.
So that's a great transition into kind of, let's talk about the gospel themes and the gospel ties here. Mm-hmm. this movie's got a lot going for it in terms of a Christian gospel influence on the script here. To me, the thing that stood out most that I enjoyed through the movie is kind of this idea of paying off our sin debt. Mm-hmm. So baby spends the whole movie trying to pay off his sin debt to Doc, and as soon as he thinks that he's paid up and that he's good, he gets, you can't get out.
Right.
So just the notion and the idea that no matter how hard we work, we can never work ourselves out of that debt. Mm-hmm. I think that, to me, that was the theme that jumped out. And then, after we started talking about it, we introduced earlier this idea of a master design. Mm-hmm. There's really a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I want to take a spin on this because I think this is great. So who is he trying to repay his debt to?
Yeah, so
Doc. And Doc is not God.
Right.
Throughout the whole film, it's clear that this is not God. So who's he trying to pay back? But who is, like, where does the love come from? Where is this love relationship with? It's with Deborah.
Yeah.
And Deborah sees everything.
Right.
Like in the diner scene where there's the shoot up, and in the garage where she's seen the worst of baby.
Yeah.
And yet she's waiting.
That's interesting.
So he's trying to pay back somebody he doesn't owe anything to.
Yeah. When
the person that he's really seeking after, the thing that he's really seeking after, doesn't care about that stuff.
Right. That's true.
I love you. I accept you. I'm going to wait for you.
So this idea of paying our debt. So we talked about the ending of the movie and how I really wanted it to end on the chase scene.
Yeah.
The second time I watched it, it kind of slapped me in the face that idea of paying our debts is why the movie doesn't end there.
Yeah.
So he spends this whole movie trying to pay this debt to Doc, and then here we are at the end of the movie. But we never, naivety of watching a movie, I guess you don't think that he still has a debt to society for the crimes that he's committed.
Right.
He's stolen however many cars, and stolen however much money, abetted in huge bank robberies,
right?
And so
he's only paying for the debts that he got caught for.
Yeah, so with one of the major themes of the movie being, paying your debts, I think he has to get caught.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's fine. But again, that's not I think the point of the movie is it's a love story.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the idea of the master design and the production of this movie too, because I think that has some pretty significant gospel ties to it as well.
Right. So this, everything that's in this movie, all of the, I think that Edgar Wright is a guy with a brilliant imagination and a creative mind, and he allows everything in the movie, from choreography to music to set design to the acting and all of these things, he's using each element to tell one single story that's trying to get us from a kid whose parents have died and has a broken, awful, messed up life to sitting down at there's a sweetness to the first time that he and Deborah meet, when she sits down at the booth with him and she's talking about her stuff, like her sister's better than her. Her sister's got better songs. Her sister's name is Mary.
Yeah,
so
she's
Mary's
talking about how
songs.
She's trying to find songs that people's names are referenced
right.
in, and he's like, she's like, what's your name? Baby.
Well,
all the songs are about you.
Right. And then one of the last things she says is, we've got a lot of songs. We got all these baby songs to listen to.
Yeah.
And it's just it's
almost kind of sweet and naive in contrast to the rest of the movie. That's almost got this brutality to it.
And see, that's what I think. If there's a master design to the storytelling, and if there's a master design to all the stories, and there is, with the music, the choreography, and all those things working together to tell this one story, then there's got to be all of the violence and all of the theft and all of the evil and all the brokenness is just distraction to the real story of the movie. And the real story of the movie is when she sits down across the booth, and when they drive, she's waiting in the car outside of the prison. That I that's the heart, and everything is trying to get you to that story. This is a master storyteller. telling a master story,
It's,
which is the gospel.
yeah, it's a cool comparison.
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, we could do 2 podcasts worth of examples of how this movie was cleverly choreographed and mastered by Edgar Wright.
Did you know this is? I feel like I'm just full of did you knows about this movie, but the actor was he was like classically trained as a dancer.
Really?
Yeah. Like so he as a kid he grew up dancing, learning ballet, and you can just see by the way he moves, especially when he in the opening scene.
So I did read that
There's an
Edgar Wright
elegance
was
to him.
attracted to him because he has a musical background. Mm-hmm. I guess he has a history as a DJ and a musician.
Yeah.
And so there's a musicality that each of these actors has to master to be able to, I mean, just flow through this as naturally as it comes across on camera.
It's great.
Last little thing that I kind of really liked with the themes here before we can wrap this up, there's a really cool kind of metaphor to me that I really liked when I watched this movie, and Jamie Foxx was giving Baby a hard time for listening to the music, and Jon Hamm, what was his line? I think I've got it in here somewhere, but he says it's his escape.
Yeah.
Like, everybody like you life a crime, like the music is his escape. He's escaping from his tinnitus, but it's also kind of his escape and his crutch from his past.
Yeah.
And there's almost like a tie to his mom through the music because his mom was a singer. Kind of this idea of using like all of these escapes and these all like everybody runs from their sin until the point where they run into the arms. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's just this, I don't know. If we're all running from our sin and our debt and we're trying to run our race to pay that on our own, like people just go in the craziest directions to try to cope with that.
And his love is never asking him to pay a debt.
Yeah. It's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you want to hit on this?
No, I think this is we've
it gets heavy.
Yeah, it is. But it's so that's what the point of a good story, and a good story well told is that it's heavy, but it's also light. It's also just fun.
Yeah.
Like you could go and watch this movie without any desire to see anything deep and be entertained
And have a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've watched it twice, and the second time I watched it, it got a whole lot deeper to me than the first time.
Yep.
You almost get distracted. It's like kind of like look over here, what's over here?
Yeah.
When the real story's happening.
Right.
Over here.
And I think that's the point of this podcast. At least what I hope it to be is just let's learn ourselves how to watch movies.
Yeah, I don't pick
find
up on the
deeper.
subtleties as well as quickly as you do, and this movie is full of subtleties.
I'm totally like burdened with that. I can't just go to a movie and just watch it. I'm always looking for, and it drives my wife crazy.
I've got to watch each of these movies we do twice because the first time I watched it, I'm watching it as the sheep consumer that these movies are mostly intended for, and I'm just going through and however the director wants me to think and feel is how I think and feel, and then the second time I can actually see what's at play under the surface.
Yeah.
And there's just so much going on in this movie that I think that the choreography and the musicality of it almost distracts you from, and I think intentionally.
Let's turn off the cameras and go watch it again.
Well, thank you so much, podcast audience. Your time is very valuable, and we appreciate you being here. This has been our take on Baby Driver. If you would be so kind as to subscribe and come back next week, we're going to talk about Road to Perdition.
Yeah, great movie.
Tom Hanks.
Jude Law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. So come back next week.
Newman.
Yeah. Paul Newman, yes. That's great.
Paul Newman.
So Road to Perdition next week. Come back and get it. And thank you so much.